Okay, today on Timeout Coaching, we welcome one of the most innovative coaches working in our game today. He is presently coaching at Pallencanestro College basket in Italy and part of the great basketball immersion organization and website. Please welcome Coach Alex Sarama. Coach, how are you today?
Coach, thanks so much. Really good. Thank you so much for having me on too. It's a pleasure to do this, and I've enjoyed our conversations over the last and come onto the podcast.
Coach, great. That's great. I mean, obviously you're a young coach, and so let's talk firstly about your first experiences in getting involved in basketball, and then how they transpired to get you involved in coaching, because you do have a really interesting story, and then we're going to start explaining how your coaching is growing and what you're doing as well. So how were you first introduced to the game?
Absolutely. So it was actually when it was the year I finished primary school in I grew up in Guildford in Surrey, and I went to a Guildford Heat BBL game at the Guildford Spectrum, and I just remember I was hooked on it. It was just the atmosphere, the game, because I grew up playing. My dad was a tennis coach, so I grew up playing tennis and football, and then I just loved it the moment I saw basketball. So I joined the Guildford Heat when I went into year 7. So that would have been my first year of secondary school. And then I just became absolutely obsessed with basketball from that point onwards, consuming as much like basketball content as I could find, playing every day. And that was really how my whole love affair with the sport started. I think I actually started coaching pretty young. It was when I was 14 years old. So that was when I would have been in year 10 of secondary school. And that was obviously with basketball in schools in the UK being so hit and miss. You could go to a really good program where there's an academy. It's like we have some really good academies now, or maybe you go to a school where there's hardly any basketball provision. Yeah. And it was a case of the latter. Where I was, and that actually worked to my favor because it gave me an opportunity to coach a lot, because they needed people to run the school clubs, and the teachers couldn't do it, so they turned to me as a year 10 student, and I was running the year 7, 8, 9 boys.
Right. Just going back to a point that I had not known about you, so you're saying your dad coached, tennis and football. Do you think that had any influence about you to see, a really important person in your life, in structured situations and teaching? And, do you think that had some influence on you at the start, that you felt confident that you could go in and coach your school team straight away?
Yes, Tony, undoubtedly. And, I've never actually spoken about this with anyone before. So it's cool kind of you brought that up. But I think there was a little bit of academic pressure I had growing up to go to like a really good university and to get like, what's supposedly considered a normal job. And, I was looking at going into law or something boring like that. But I think, and the fact that my dad was a tennis coach, because my mom was kind of pushing me to go down the more traditional route.
Sure.
But the fact, that my dad had success as a tennis coach in that sport, and I think, just the fact I saw him in that environment so much, I think it made it more like, for me, I could see myself more as a basketball coach just from that. And then I think more recently, Tony, in recent times, I mean, the support I get from my family is amazing. But I think, because my dad's been through it for like 35, 40 years now as a tennis coach, it really helps me just because, you can have your highs and lows in coaching. And just to have that support element, I think is critical.
Wow, that's a great story. So you're at school, you're doing some coaching there, you're playing. What's the next stage after that? You're involved in the Guildford Heat, which is, I say this to a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of young people. This is where our biggest weaknesses in the UK, is our professional stroke EBL1 setup, where it was one of my biggest, motivations when our teachers at 11 years old would drive us over an hour and a half from East London to Crystal Palace to watch some of the greatest teams that ever played in our country, playing in massive European games against Maccabi, against Blair Leverkusen, Milan, all these top teams, and also the domestic games. And I'm seeing Alton Bird and Dan Lloyd and Pete Jeremich, all these incredible players, Paul Stimson. And it was aspirational for me. It was, the next day I was going back to the gym to practice and try to emulate what Alton Bird was doing, from the point guard position. And so, having that local team to go to support, I think this is where, in Spain and Italy, it's second nature for any young player to be able to go pretty much, and watch some sort of high level basketball. So, yeah, with Guildford.
You've hit the nail on the head, because my theory is that the reason why, I think we have some really good, and we'll talk about this later, I think we have some really good British coaches coming up. But the main difference is in Europe, just the club environment, the kids see pros in their own club way more. Like, they'd finish a practice and see legit pros playing, and the pros would interact with them, they'd see them and their role models, and then they can go catch a quality game. And it's just the difference, of the stuff that our kids, for instance, here at college are exposed to, and just any other kids in Italy because of that. I think that plays a big part. And like you said, I remember going to a Guildford Heat game against Badalona Juventus in the ULEB, when it was ULEB.
I was there. I was actually physically in the arena watching it. I wasn't there as in, I remember going to watch that game because it was Badalona. It was an incredible, level of game, ULEB Cup. I remember it very, very clean.
And I was 15, Tony, at the time. So I was doing the halftime. I was coming on at halftime with my Guildford Heat under 16s team to entertain the crowd. I remember blowing a layup, but so I waited after the game to see Ricky Rubio and get his autograph. Wow. And I actually told Ricky this story, because I worked with Ricky 3 years in a row. I did quite a bit in my NBA years at his camps and with his foundation, so I got to know Ricky and his family pretty well. And we laughed about that story when I told him several years later.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's a great story. So you're at the Guildford Heat, you're at school. What, what's the next kind of stages there? What are you doing there?
I actually felt that the Heat missed the trick in terms of getting more kids playing the game and providing a quality coaching experience. So when I was kind of year 11, end of under 16, I was playing in the Heat National League team then, but I started to get into the coaching just even more and more. And I was coaching probably at that time, about 10 hours a week from all the stuff at school. And I was volunteering for the Heat too. And I was doing a lot of organization for them. I liked my operations too for a young age. So I actually decided to start my own club. And that was called the Guildford Goldhawks to begin with. And the school I went to, I did a lot in the school community. I was quite active. So I had a really good relationship with my secondary school, St. Peter's. And they just gave me access to the gym on Saturday morning for like £10 an hour. So I booked it for 4 hours every Saturday. And initially, the only kids coming to sessions were kids from my school who I was coaching in the lower school teams, right? But then, because I'd done some work for Guildford Heat, volunteering, some of the kids that actually were going to those sessions ended up coming to the Goldhawk sessions, which was great. It was that age, Tony, when I really started studying the game. And the stuff I was doing wasn't the right stuff, but it was still giving me a really valuable learning opportunity.
Sure.
And with Goldhawks, we really grew, and we did some big events. We had like Alan Stein, Drew Hannon over. We had at our peak, we had like 5 coaches who were pretty much full time doing community stuff. Now, it was very difficult for me to manage because I was a teenager, and then I continued it when I went to the University of Nottingham and did history. So I was coming back to Surrey every weekend. And, I was so young, it was very difficult for me to manage. That's how I learned how to do it. But to manage a team of adults, and, I made so many mistakes, but it's how you learn.
Yeah.
And we had some good results, Tony. Like, we had quite a few, especially with our girls program. A lot of girls went on to national teams like U15, U16. And I do think we were doing things very differently, and we were really innovating back at the time. So that was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I know some of that backstory and stuff. So at that time, were you did you take any of the governing body award courses, and who were some of the coaches that you were leaning on to try to upscale your skills?
Absolutely. So Coach, a mutual friend of ours, Coach Mark Dunning, was the first, I'd say, like, real senior coach to help me out. That's why I respect Mark so much. Like, and in my NBA years, we'd always, whenever I was traveling a lot. I lived in Madrid, but I obviously came back to see my family, and we would always do our catch up in Egham at the Burger King because it's close to the motorway. But so I had some really good conversations with Mark just early on that, and I met Mark when I think I would have been 17, first year of sixth form. So he was just giving me some points and stuff, and I did do like the level 1. I did the level 1 when I was like 15, but I didn't get my qualification until I was the right age. I can't remember what that was. Yeah. And I did my level 2 with Jimmy Guyman in Solon.
Wow.
And that was amazing, Tony, because I loved it. And I thought Jimmy was great. And I hadn't really seen in the UK, I hadn't seen in-person coaching like that, if I'm honest with you.
No.
So it was refreshing to me. And
I mean, obvious, now, Jimmy's son and stuff. So his legacy is a little bit, is just in the background now. But those who know, I mean, certainly the stuff that he was doing with players, obviously Joel Freeland and stuff. I mean, there was some incredible, his skill development, the development of the individual skills was incredible. Yeah, it was certainly, there was some old school aspects to it. But his attention to detail was incredible. It was off the charts.
That's what I took from it, Tony. And obviously, like, Matt does an amazing job with the Kestrels. Like, I've watched some of. I honestly think that the stuff they run is far superior to BBL teams. If I'm completely honest with you. No, and Bev too was absolutely instrumental in helping me with the growth of Goal Hawks and the Club Mark stuff. So I'd say, it's not many people know, but she helped me out so much. It was like she took me seriously as a 16-year-old. I was 16 trying to get meetings with her, and she always gave me all her time and support. So, and she was a major help in effort.
Yeah. Such a sad loss to the game. Okay, so you go to university. Did you do any coaching at the University of Nottingham, or were you focused on continuing to come back and do your stuff down here down in Surrey?
No, I did, Tony. So I was assistant with the first team and head coach of the second team. So that was good because I was coaching guys way older than me.
Sure.
And that was and the first team, and we weren't bad. Like, we had a couple US, scholarship guys who played D1. So that was cool just to be around that and be in that environment.
Great. And then from the university, did you join the NBA straight away? What was that process? And I guess if we can say this was almost a fork in the road for your life, to get involved with the biggest basketball organization in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. So the plan was probably, I wanted to take a year out and see if I could run Goal Hawks full time and help it reach its full potential, with me being able to work on it full time for the first time. Because obviously in the past, I'd always been studying. even though it was like a full-time job. But I saw, ever since my first year of university, I saw that the NBA advertised for internships in their London office. And it was typically, they advertised every like April, May. So I applied for it when it came up in my last year of uni. And at first I applied and didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything for so long, I almost forgot about it. I thought that they didn't want. And then suddenly it all happened in 1 week where I did like 3 or 4 interviews, and sure enough, got offered the basketball operations internship, and that was where everything changed from that moment onwards.
Yeah. Up until that moment, so let's just talk about this. You've got there are other people, but those 2 important people, like you said, Mark Dunning and Jimmy Guyman. As kind of what were your kind of core, like, not your complete philosophy, but some core things that you were doing, from a coaching standpoint? Were you just about the individual skills, or were you what were you teaching at that time? Because now, when you do get to the NBA, you're going to be exposed to world-class basketball and coaches. So what were the things that were you at the start for you that you were looking at?
So you might be hearing some background noise. I hope it's okay.
No,
I hope you can't hear this. It's good.
Yeah, we're fine.
Good. So I think I'm the first kind of generation of so much material being available online. And now I do a really good job filtering it. And I learned that in my MBA years. But at that time, I had no idea. I didn't know better. So kind of I spent so much time watching the FIBA clinics on YouTube. and guys like Gannon Baker. I was doing a lot of Gannon stuff then. Because he actually came from the Jordan Brand Classic to Guildford. Sure. And they did some outreach local teams. So my team, I got to play, and
don't forget, I organized that for Nike.
Coached it.
Yeah, I coached it, but I was the lead for Nike, and that was my time I was working for him. So yeah, I mean, Gannon's a great guy, 100%. And there were, back in those days, there certainly was a lot of transferable skills. I mean, he's obviously evolved as well. I mean, this is 10, 12 years ago now. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. So it was, I was looking at a lot of that stuff, Tony, but then it was my first year in the NBA when I really started to change. And that was actually when I read Brian McCormick's books, 21st Century Guide to Skill Development, or something. I think that was the name of it. Yeah. I read that. I discovered an early form of basketball immersion. And then I started watching a lot of Mike McKay stuff. Right. And, obviously, like Mike, Chris Oliver, obviously with immersion. I mean, I speak with Chris every day. So he's, been one of the biggest influences on me. And then same with Mike. I mean, I speak with Mike once a week, and he's really helped mentor and influence me a lot with my coaching.
Right. I mean, I mean, Mike, I don't think it's a far stretch to say is probably, has influenced the way that junior basketball was being coached, probably as much as anyone in the world, just in the way that he's opened up people's eyes to, the whole methodology of coaching, of younger players. So, and we will get into that. So now you're at the NBA. Just give me and the listeners a brief snapshot of the types of things that you do on a year-on-year basis, because you're getting involved in incredible projects and you're meeting some incredible people. So just talk through those type of things that you were involved in.
Oh, it was amazing, Tony. We could do a whole podcast on just the stories from those weeks. So to begin with, I was actually basketball operations and communications intern. And I was based in London, but so Neil Meyer was my boss, and he was a 11-year NBA assistant coach. And it went really well from the start. I really clicked with my team, and I had an amazing team to work with. So really the job entailed it was such a vast mix. That's why it was so interesting and so fun. It would be doing junior NBA stuff. So you'd be traveling, running coaching clinics, like clinics for kids, camps, and the travel was obviously insane. It would be, I think I visited almost 40 countries in the 3 years, including places like Kazakhstan. It was insane. It was so cool. It would be Basketball Without Borders, which were really fun. Just, especially my last one in Latvia. That was my coolest experience because Rick Carlisle was actually watching a lot of my coaching. And then it was funny because the first few days, I wasn't sure if he liked my stuff because obviously it was all decision. The last day, he was like, he gave me like a lot of his time, and he sat next to me at the dinner, and we were just talking. And that to me was incredible. And also the one in Belgrade in Serbia I had lunch sitting next to Popovich. So it was, you can't pay for things like that.
No. I was also lucky when I did Basketball Without Borders to sit next to Hubie Brown, for dinner and have him at our camp for the whole time as well. So yeah, I know that experience. Those are priceless, those experiences. So that's awesome. And you also, I'm assuming that all of these events, even for an example, you organize in the NBA coaching clinics at the NBA games in London, which happened every single year, you were able to, talk to assistant coaches and strength guys, head coaches. So you're immersed in this incredible environment, of the world, of the best in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually the London games, one of the most enjoyable things on the job. I mean, it was very busy, but that was fun because I worked with BE a lot on that program, and I think we really grew that event because to begin with, it was kind of just a one night clinic, just with the NBA coaches, and that was it. And by the last year we did it, we had the clinic across 3 days, and we had Mike McKay and Dawn from Canada there, who I brought over, and hundreds of coaches were there. So that was really fun working with Brian Aldred on that one. But yeah, just the chance to develop relationships with, assistant coaches and head coaches in a few cases. I mean, it was great. But I always had in the back of my mind, Tony, the fact that if I wanted to get an NBA team position, I wanted it to be because I could really coach,
right?
And in those NBA years, I was going crazy on the research. I was reading books, scientific papers about skill acquisition, and I know we'll come on to that. Watching clinics, watching synergy. But I wanted to get a job because I could have an impact, and because I coached differently versus just because it was a relationship. So I always had that on the back of my mind, and I wanted to actually work in a proper team environment where I could come into contact with players every day and kind of show what impact my philosophy could have.
So just so that people really understand, I know a little bit of background about the background, but you can explain it in your own words. Most people, and it was a surprise to me as well, would say that you were on the fast track to being any type of high-level NBA executive that you wanted to be. You could have been, eventually controlling a region like Africa or Asia, or, being certainly involved at high operations in those regions. You could have eventually potentially gone across and done something in central office. You could have potentially even gone onto some teams. And yet you chose to, step away and, go into coaching in a full-time capacity. I mean, what was the mindset behind that and the process as well?
So I think I really enjoyed, why I coach is because I simply love it. The feeling it gives me, and to see improvement in the players, especially youth players. I didn't feel like I could experience that thrill in an executive type role with the NBA. And, you know, maybe sometime I felt that sometime in the future, maybe I could go back to that and be maybe work some type of role in an NBA office somewhere around the world. But I felt like to shape my learning and to shape my personal growth, I wanted to experience life outside the NBA. And kind of, I felt really privileged, Tony, to get it so good so young. The 5-star hotels, expensive dinners, the travel. And I felt like, you know, I actually wanted to see what life was like on the other side a little bit, and really hustle more to get back to the top, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, that NBA position, it could have been a job for life, of course.
Absolutely.
But I think the biggest thing which drives me is it's a continual quest to get better. I'm a big believer in this concept of Kaizen, and I felt like my growth would be optimized outside of the NBA environment. And I know it's, to be honest, Tony, it's really tough, especially for younger coaches, to ignore things like money, because it's, you know, even this year I've had some amazing offers, right? So like various pro teams, etc. And it's like, I'm a big believer that in your 20s, you just have to coach the most that you can and be in the right environment and ignore the money, because I believe that the money will come later if you really do a good job, and you use your time as a young coach to grow and kind of show what you can do. And that was the reason I left at the end of the day. And it was very difficult because I had an amazing team, like I said, to work with, but I knew in my gut it was the right choice.
Okay, that's great. Moving on to that critical decision, what was the process, and did once when you decided to leave, did you have a firm idea what you were going to do, or you were just like, I'm going to drive myself, I'm going to put myself into positions, and then if the best situation comes up, I'll take it? Or what was the process with that, and what exactly happened?
So I went straight to elite athletes / elite academy in Belgium. And the reason for that was, I think EA, they're fairly known in the basketball world for doing stuff differently. And that's why I aligned with myself, because, you know, I'm all about challenging traditional thinking, etc. Belgium is obviously not particularly a basketball market. It's the Pro League's pretty good there. It is. And they got some teams like Ostende who are great. And I think there are some pretty good youth kids coming up. But it was because the role there was technical director. And for me, I felt like there was no chance in Europe another club would give me that position so young, at 23 years old, where I could really create a program for the club and show what I could do. But I think I learned so much, Tony, because I should have made sure that the situation I was going into was absolutely perfect and professional, especially from the NBA, when you leave the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think I was too happy in terms of, I was so eager to show what I could do that I didn't really make sure that things were set up as they should have been going into that situation in Belgium. And in the end, I was only there for 7-8 months. Okay. Because I left in March during the first lockdown. And what it was a case of, Tony, was just like the organizational philosophy and aims just didn't align. It was two owners. I was joining as the third kind of minority owner of the organization. But for me, it's like, I want to really have an impact on players and give them a chance to get to that next level. And I wanted to work with guys who have a shot of being basketball players. Right. And I thought I made the mistake of assuming that they wanted the same thing.
Yep.
And they actually didn't. You know, I think they have some really holistic ideas at EA. but they weren't interested in taking players in to get to the next level, you know. And for me, it's like, I want to show that you can do transformational, evidence-based coaching with kids who have a shot at being pros at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So let's talk about exactly, just back up just a little bit. You've met Mike Mackay, Chris Oliver. How are they starting to change your philosophy, and specifically, you know, in the teaching of the game and in skill development, skill acquisition? What was these? Was there a a moment that you just went, wow, you know, I've been doing this wrong, or in my mind, I've been doing this wrong all along? Or was it a slow burn that you started to change in your thinking?
Great question. So I think it all happened during 1 week where I read a blog on immersion. I think it was about something like 3-man weave. I read Brian McCall's book, and then I watched a clinic from Mike Mackay on games approach in Manitoba.
Right.
3 things combined, and I was just like, oh my word, I can't believe I've been doing it like this for 3-4 years. But you know, I felt really lucky because, I mean, I was still young then. That's when I was like 21, 22, you know, so I seriously young as a coach. So, you know, to be able to have at least an understanding of another way to coach at that age, I was very lucky, you know. And everything since that point, Tony, has been studying, you know, looking at, you can use the term games approach, but, you know, looking at how players actually learn, the importance of decision making, and just creating practices and workouts which give players those opportunities, as opposed to relying on traditional forms of practice without defenders, on-air training, etc.
That's really interesting. Now, you know, so you know, was this a catalyst to want to do your own thing, to want to be involved in a club situation or an academy situation? Was that was the catalyst to that?
That was it, Tony. And I'll be honest with you, to this day, I don't think there is an elite program wholly, I know this is a big statement, but wholly adopting evidence-based within Europe. Right. In terms of not just the coaching, because you've got amazing academies in the UK, but in terms of how, you know, like a full-time athletic S&C coach who adopts elements of constraints-led approach and modern thinking, like nutritionist, applying the research on talent ID, load management, all these things. I'm talking more about the big clubs in Europe. That's what I'm talking about for this. And it's, I still feel like the approach to talent development with big clubs in Europe is throwing a bunch of eggs against the wall and seeing what ones don't break. And I've got friends who are really good coaches working in these EuroLeague environments, either for the men's team, the youth team, both. And it's, you know, they said there's no real evidence-based rationale being adopted in a lot of these situations.
Right. That's an interesting one. So let's get into the crux of this then, because you know what, anyone that's seen your stuff on Instagram or on Facebook, you know, and I said to you, you know, at the start, how you're really, the innovation of what you're doing is, you know, is by at a cutting edge. I had not seen some of the things that you or the application, how you were applying some of the things ever, and that's not just on you know, what anyone could term gimmicks, or, you know, these kind of things these themes that you come up with, which are really, you know, inspiring anyway. But it's more also about how you're taking the skill and really looking at it and breaking it down and then putting it back again. What's this whole? How does this all come about? And where do you generate this this whole philosophy from? Obviously, you're taking stuff from Mike Mackay and Chris Oliver, but where are you taking your own personal inspiration about that from?
So it's, to be honest, like 90% of the stuff I do is, I'd say, original in terms of like all the stuff I take from Chris and Mike. Even when I do take it, because it's amazing stuff, I add my tweaks onto it, and I add my thoughts and I call it a load, like a progression basically. But It's not a progression in terms of going from like 1-on-1 to 2-on-2. It could be a different constraint or something within the game. The biggest thing, Tony, is seeing the things that players do in games and recreating situations from that.
Okay. And
I don't mean like, I think the traditional approach from skill trainers typically is doing, seeing an NBA player do a move and then repping it 1-on-0, and that's not what I mean.
And you call that your terminology, or most people's terminology for that is, you call that block training. Is that correct?
Exactly. When it's just the same move being repeated over and over again, with the coach showing the player what to do and how to do it, and just asking the player to reproduce that specific movement.
And just before you continue, because it's really important we get the understanding to this, but do you feel that this approach and this philosophy is born out of what you believe is the correct way or a new and more effective way to teach the game? Or do you think it's because younger people are taking information in a different way? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. And I think the thing which drove me the most towards this approach in terms of adding defenders and doing it with the same cues that players will see in a game is, it's just all the evidence overwhelmingly supports it. All the scientific studies that have been done on how athletes learn, either in basketball or other sports, it shows that this type of practice is just more likely to lead to transfer in games. It just does. And it's also, Tony, just from my personal experiences, when I did the 1-on-0 type stuff at Goldhawks, I mean, that was different because at that time there was no one doing that really in the UK. I think there are a lot of guys doing it, but it didn't transfer, Tony. Like, the girls would be doing these really cool moves and stuff, but they'd never do it in a game. So it was kind of me combining my personal thoughts and experiences with what the science shows us and tells us.
So let's just so that the viewers, the listeners can get an understanding. Let's take an example of wing penetration. So some sort of penetration, either penetration to the baseline or penetration middle. How are you? So it traditionally, like even for a coach like myself, we would do a number of drills where the ball may move to from point to wing, and that player would explode off the dribble, and he'd make a pass either cross court, or maybe even the coach would shout, corner, cross court, finish. Sure. That could be a traditional way. How are you teaching that skill slightly differently, and obviously with these cues and these decision making, building in decision making?
Great example. So for the listeners, I would say picture the offensive player, say they're on the right wing, and say there's a defender in front of them. I'm just giving one of many different ways I could work on the situation. Sure. So they've got a defender in front of them on that right wing. Then in the left corner, you've got an offensive player in the corner, and then their defender is obviously going to be the low man, the low defender, so it's a 2v2. I could give an advantage. So that means as the coach, I am going to stand behind the offensive player, and I'm going to either put my right hand by their side or my left hand, which the defender has to high five. As soon as the defender moves, the offensive player can drive. So obviously, if I put my right hand up it's going to be a middle drive. If I put my left hand up, it's a baseline drive. So it's a little bit random and unpredictable. Yeah. And then it's a live 2-2. So obviously the cues that the offensive, the driver is looking at is the help committing? If there's no help, it's going to be a finish. And then obviously if the help comes, they're into the drive and kick and they're playing off that. Sure. So it's teaching in more of this games approach, but this is where it's about, you know, I would start with something like that. But then the biggest thing which coaches need to be attuned to is that we have to be watching as these small-sided games happen to see what the players are finding difficult. And that could be a decision-making thing, or it could be a technical thing. And I would have no problem, Tony, after the players experience the game and they know what a driving kick actually is and why they would do it, that's when I would improve the technique. Because the technique is it is. And if
I mean,
you know,
and that's I think that there is a point. It's got to be one of the biggest points that I feel that games-based approach coaching is missing at this moment. You know, everyone says games-based approach, you know, and let them just go out there and play. And yet there is a technical component that we can't look away from. This is what I keep explaining to someone. If you're saying to me that anyone can shoot the ball however they want, well, that's an impossibility. You know, shooting is a highly complex technical skill, which needs, you know, extreme refinement. And that's not a decision-based process at all. So that's always, I always think that there is a component that has to be in there from a technical standpoint. I'm glad you've shown that and brought that up. One point I wanted to make was how, because I've seen you in a lot of these incredible breakdown situations. So I've seen you teaching one-on-one. I've seen you in two-man game, three-man game, even four-man game. What's your philosophy when it gets to 5-on-5 and they're in some sort of game situation? So it's a scrimmage or could be controlled scrimmage as well. Are you stopping action, you know, if there's a correct decision made and you want to make that point? Do you not stop the action? Are you stopping something if someone does something wrong, or do you use video to come back to it? What's your philosophy with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, playing 5-on-5 is critical. And so right now I'm just doing my job here at college is player development. So I'm working with our best prospects. But next year, I'll be head coaching a prep team, and we're bringing in all players outside of Italy. I think we'll have quite a few kids from the UK actually coming. Wow. But I will be doing practices where I start with 5-on-5.
Wow.
And it will be periods where I say nothing, just like in a game, and I have all the coaches coaching from where they would in the game. So that means only one standing up each side, the other sitting down. Sometimes I might blast arena music over, so the coaches, you know, their role is minimal anyway, because you won't be able to hear them. And then other times it will be 5-on-5 where I'm more stopping to make interventions. So, and I actually assign that, Tony, on my practice plan. It's, you know, I have a special column, and if it's a T, if the drill or small-sided game is T, it's teaching, and the head coach or assistants you can designate can stop, and that's a big part of games approach. It's not just roll the balls out and play. If it's L, the feedback has to be on the fly. L for learning. So that means, you know, you can give feedback on a dead ball, subs, whatever, and then C is compete. Not even coaching at all. It's all player led. So it's TLC. Got that from McKay.
Wow. Love that.
Yeah. And so all in my practice plans, like I often start non-linear. So that means I would start with 5v5, and then I would see whatever we do next is shaped by the 5v5. Yeah. You know, what was it the players found it? And I would typically do a debrief with the players. Would come in and be like, you know, what was it we found difficult? Talk to the person next to you for 30 seconds. Then we get some ideas from that, where to go next. So obviously, it makes your coaching way better, because suddenly you have to suddenly run a drill or small-sided game for whatever it is they say. And you really have to know the game in order to be able to do that successfully.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Two more questions on, the way you coach now, and this kind of philosophy. The first is, one of those, this is not even a question. This is where your uniqueness is it's for, but where are you getting the themes from for some of these, these video packages that you're putting together, or your skill sets? What is that? Just something that comes out? Because I had never seen someone do anything like that. Maybe you have, when you've traveled the world, but I'd never seen someone theme something up to one of the, I don't know, what did you do? You did James Bond, or you did some other stuff.
Yeah.
You've done a lot of those stuff. Yeah. I mean, where's that coming from?
No, that really just came about, Tony, as because I want to make learning fun for the kids. And even if the guys are like pros, still they like having a laugh, especially maybe a team of veterans. All right, maybe I wouldn't do it, but if they're young pros, I like having things which are catchy, so it sticks. So I'm big on these analogies, massive on these analogies. So, and it's actually, again, that comes back to evidence. There's a research scientist called Dendre Gentner, and her whole focus has been on how analogies help people learn. So I actually read one of her studies 2 years ago, and that's when I really started thinking about how I can apply it to coaching. So I do things like James Bond License to Kill. A lot of young players, and I came up with this in Belgium because the guys had no idea as to when to look for a one-on-one. They would catch and go one-on-one every time. And it's not realistic. It's not what happens at the next level. So to get your license to kill, you had to have a matchup advantage. It had to be late shot clock, or you had to have a double gap. So there's no single gap with defender stunting. And then we used that and we made it fun. I did video sessions where I have the James Bond License to Kill song come on. And that's one example of many different analogies I use. And they just, when they like it, Yeah.
And then the thing that acts, that encompasses that is video. I mean, I was on a presentation on Wednesday with, 50, 70 coaches, whatever it was, with BE. And, I had explained, back when I started, or even, certainly when I started professional coaching, I was splicing VHS to VHS, you had these two video recorders, and no one, then we did DVDs, and it's now you can do something on your phone, and you likely can edit that video on your phone. That's how far we've come. So you're obviously a big proponent of video. Firstly, how do you use it? But secondly, is there a limit, and where does the overkill kind of come when we're using video now?
Really good. I guess we'll get into some stuff here. So iMovie makes things easy nowadays, because like you said, you have it on your phone or your Mac, and it's so easy to do the funny videos because I can just rip something off YouTube on a YouTube downloader and then put it straight into iMovie. Sure. So it makes it fun. And just things like playing music on a lot of the videos. Like I put the players' favorite songs, whatever their favorite hip hop song or whatever it is, and I put that over our practice edits, and just it spices things up. When it comes to video, Tony, the first time I work on something, sometimes I won't. If they have no idea as to what it is, like take for instance, I was working with under 16s on a drop coverage 2 weeks ago, and it was actually the focus was more on actually coverage solutions for the offense to play against it, as opposed to the defense, because we're not really going to use a drop coverage with them. But if they want to become EuroLeague prospects, which we hope they will be, they have to know how to play against it. They have to know all
of the options. Yep, absolutely.
That's it. Exactly, Tony. So I started with video to show them what the drop coverage was, but we didn't look, or I didn't speak about the offense. It was only the defense. So we emphasized the drop defender retreating, guarding two. And again, I used an analogy from Game of Thrones. There's this, because I've seen it. There's a scene where there's this giant like holding the door, and it gives time for the guys to escape from the the I can't remember the name. The White Walkers.
Yeah.
So we use the analogy for talking about the drop guy. So he's got to temporarily guard 2 to give time for his on-ball defender to recover and try and get back in front. So I showed 2 clips and that was it. But there are 2 really good clips from the NBA. I think it was the NBA, one from Real Madrid from Tavares, because they obviously play a lot of drop. And we just spoke about, I gave them 2 things to emphasize: drop defender, retreating, being disruptive, being big, and on-ball defender, trying to fight back over. They couldn't go under. That was the constraint. Get back over. I didn't talk about it. And I let them play, experience it. And I think the problem now is a lot of coaches use video immediately to show, to kind of show players what they want and to show them one way of doing it. And I don't feel like that's the best effective way of using video. Or they do it for too long. And for me, I like just using 1 or 2 good clips.
Interesting. No, that's great. That's great. That's a great point there. I mean, when you take this back, to, when the game, was, evolving in, the 80s and 90s, 2000s. I mean, one thing that I actually was watching, I think a film from like the 90s. You might have seen this on Facebook with Bob Kloppenberg at, coaching, his SOS defense in Birmingham with the early Bullets teams. This is even before Nick Nurse. This is really early stuff. This was held at Lilleshall. But what shocked me was the skill of some of the British players, these guards. And I can only deduce that at that time, like they come off of some screen, which they didn't even know was kind of like single high, and they pull up and they bank it in. Because they probably have played so much that was what that was something that they had practiced. And like you say, if you're giving some of the players, if you give them all the solutions, like, snake or, flare, whatever it's going to be, from the move off that ball screen, then before they actually feel and sense it, maybe sometimes, that's, that kind of can cloud their mind.
So true, Tony. And that's why, if you always come in with the explicit instruction and you show them what to do, some of the more creative things that could work better for them won't work, just for the reasons you just said. So there is a time for explicit instruction, but especially in the early on when we're working on a new area, I like the players to experience it. And I make sure that the defense is coached so that it's what the offense will see in the game, but then I let the offense experiment. And it's after that, once they've had enough time to experiment, that's when I show them some other solutions which are more explicit.
Okay. Last question on your philosophy or, how you're coaching at this moment. We've talked about this offline. You're having huge success, with younger players, and you're having huge success with the federations that are taking you to do clinics and to open people's minds. What's the gray area to moving this to, say, high level professional basketball? Have you thought about how that translates? Because we've discussed obviously, how some situations require more, more, like you said, more concise instruction. What's your thoughts with that?
I think it's going to take one team to have success adopting these things before everyone else starts copying. And I believe that the decision making is the next frontier in the NBA. I just really believe that it's the next thing which needs to be bridged. I think it starts, to me, we're at Immersion, we got 6 NBA teams who we do some work with. And I think the hardest thing is just time. Like, coaches don't have much time in the NBA world, A, to access the material, and B, just practice time. So I think it has to be done in a player development setting first.
Sure.
And implementing some, but then again, it's the traditional way of doing player development is one coach, one player. And, you know, when I started here at college, that's what we did with all the best prospects. And I said, well, this is actually why we need to do small group sessions so that these guys can actually get these decisions and work on the things they need. So I think it's just a matter of time, Tony. I think in 5 to 10 years, I think this approach to coaching is going to be way more widespread.
Great, interesting. Very quickly, just sum up. You're in Italy at this moment. You're working for Basketball Immersion. So just give us an overview of how it is working in Italy. The fantastic basketball nation, and then also your relationship with Basketball Immersion.
Great. So I think working in Italy it's great. It's basketball is so big here, and it's not, the pro league isn't as strong as it used to be. I think, due to more financial reasons over the last 10 years, but still you can see some really good coaching. And obviously you got teams like Messina and Milan, and like Messina's, he's 40 minutes away with Milano. So as soon as COVID's over, I'll definitely be getting into some practices, which would be an amazing learning experience. But so basically the program I'm at, we only take prospects up until about 19 years old. So next year our men's team will be in B1, which is the 3rd level. So it's pretty high, but we're only playing with like U17, U18, U19s. So we've had a big track record for producing players within Italy. So a lot of our players are now in A1 and A2, but the players we have now, it's off the charts. I think we've got some of the best prospects in Italy. We've got one legit NBA talent, multiple EuroLeague potential guys. So for me, obviously, to do the player development for these guys, it's really fun.
Yeah.
And I'm documenting everything. So, in 5 years, we'll be able to kind of show the things they're working on. Right. But it's typically my day-to-day, Tony, is I do like 2 player dev every day, typically 2 hours. And those mostly are small groups. But like yesterday, I did an individual with our under-16s kid. Who's hopefully going to be like one of the top performers if the Euro Championships go ahead this summer for 16s. And that was just an individual, because there are some technical things that I've been seeing that he needed work on. And that was, number one, being able to make a cross-court skip one-handed against the blitz coverage. And I know it sounds really specific, but I only knew that because of the small-sided games. Right. When he's getting blitzed or there's an aggressive coverage, when the low man's tagging, he's not able to make that pass with one hand. He's always having to put a second hand on the ball, and it's giving the defense more time to close out. So all we did, and I'm going to actually share this on my Facebook today, was we were just doing literally like one-hand passes off a pullback cross court. And that is a seriously hard thing to do. Like, absolutely. I don't know how many 16 players in the world can make a pullback one hand and skip it to a corner. Yeah. So we were actually just working on that for like 10, 15 minutes, but in a random variable way. So sometimes I would get him a shot out of it instead. Sometimes it would be a finish. We were working on that because that's what I've seen as a problem. And then the second thing we were working on, this was just yesterday, so this is why it's fresh in my mind, was his Euro step, because he's always been like the strongest, most physical player. He's like, long term, he's a 2 or 3 in EuroLeague. And he's always been able to just get to the rim, make a body finish and get over. But at the next level, he's not going to be able to do that because it's going to be bigger, stronger guys. So I'm working on expanding his finishing package, and we're looking at a Euro step for what to do in situations where a defender has escaped the charge circle and you can't just go up over, right? So again, we were just working on that, refining it, still doing it with some variability. But the thing I was trying to focus on with him was selling the fake and then exploding on the separation to get close to the rim, because he was jumping, and obviously at the next level, he's got to get close to the rim so the shot's not blocked, because there's going to be a second defender rotating up. So it's that level of detail which is, I believe, is going to make the difference for them. And so for every player, I have a player development plan, which changes every month. So it's like the three things which are the most important things for them that month to work on. And some of those goals are sprints, like 100-meter races, which we can attack in a week. Some are 800 meters, which is a month. And with some of the guys, it's a marathon. And that's like where I'm being
right.
He's got to be shooting threes consistently, but that's going to take longer than a month. That's a whole season thing.
Yeah, interesting. And then with basketball immersion, obviously you've known Chris for a long while, but some incredibly exciting things you're doing with them.
Oh, it's so fun. Like, I think we've got the new website finally coming. It's taken about 8 months, but that's going to be a game changer for us. I think the next few years, I'm really excited to see where we can take it, because I feel like we're just getting near. We're growing, and I think soon it's gonna expand rapidly, even more rapidly. So it's so fun just being part of that and I just love coming up with new ideas and being able to share it with coaches. It's really nice to feel like we're having an impact.
No, it's awesome. Let's take this back to the UK. So, what are your thoughts on, British coaching and, coaching fraternity? You spent quite a lot of time now, away from the UK. So, do you have good, links with the coaches here? Or, what's your thought process with that?
So Tony, it's funny. I think, to be honest with you, I don't keep in touch with many British coaches. And it's not because I don't want to. I do want to, but it's just because I haven't been in the system since I was a Goalhawk, which was like 7 years ago. So coaches I keep in touch with, obviously yourself and Mark Dunning, Alan Keane, James Vere, Ashley Cookson, but he's in Canada now anyway, so he hasn't been in the country a long time. And that's really it, to be honest with you. And I think we've spoken about it. There's still a stigma around being a British coach, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I remember the first dinner I had at the NBA Global Games in London. My first year was in one of the most senior people in the NBA, one of the most senior staff. He said to me, Alex, we know you want to be an NBA coach. If you really want to take that seriously, you got to start coaching in an American accent. And I'm glad I did not heed that advice. But I think it's really important that, I think you see a lot more sharing and collaborativeness in other countries. And I think that could be the next step for British coaches to develop that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no question that, you're in a country now where, it's just more coaches and more professional coaches. I mean, if you're even in, B1, B2, you could be a professional coach of your town, a small little town, and we're not talking about A2. A2 coaches are, full time, it's a professional league. So what's that? 2 conferences, 24 teams, maybe more. Yeah, 24 teams, and obviously A1. So, there's so much, it's a tough comparison. And I think that it is going in the right direction, but, I definitely believe that, again, we need more people reaching out to you. And you share a lot of stuff on Facebook and Instagram, but, at the same time, we need more people reaching out, to even ask you, why do you do that? Or how do you do that? And I'm sure that you would be in a position to share that information as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. I'm always, more than happy to help when coaches reach out. And I think that's what we need. And to be honest, I think my passion project at some time in my life would be to do academy again in the UK, but not like an academy, more like a youth club where you can take kids to mini basket through to under 18s, under 20s, because I just still see so much potential. And I still really care about UK basketball, and I've got the best interests of my home country at heart.
Sure.
And that's still my ultimate goal. I don't think it's a thing I'm going to do right now, But at some point in the future, I'd love to do that, because I'd love to see what you could do with UK kids, applying just some of the ideas we've spoken about today, but being able to do it like 4-5 times a week. Because it's like, you know, on 16th, we have practice 6 days a week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, and best prospects, it's 2 a day because they work with me. Yeah. And that's the biggest difference. They're not more talented athletically, or they just get more opportunities, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, 3 rapid fire questions. Your favorite, this is a crazy question for you. Your favorite drill, which is like, I mean, you must have, you know, 20, 30,000 drills now, but have you got a favorite drill you're running at this moment?
I do a lot of teaching out of 4-on-3. I like it. I can do a lot out of it. I would say my favorite thing is actually from Moncho Fernandez in Obradoiro, and it's 5-on-5 on the table. So basically, every basket missed, you add the number of points, whether it's a 3, 2, or 1, to the table.
Right.
So say it's 2 threes, both teams miss 2 threes, 6 on the table. Then the next team that makes the basket, if it's a 2-pointer, they get the 2 points plus all the points on the table. So it would be 8 points.
Love that.
And Tony, the best thing when we play that, we play it a lot here. The competitive.
We froze. We just got you back. Hello?
Oh, I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. Yeah, you're just finishing up there. Let's do this segment again. Okay, so I'll say your favorite drill, and then I'll get this edited out. So your favorite drill.
So I do a lot out of 4-on-3, and I think, you know, I'm big on this idea of dominoes, and I like all my players to be obsessed with knowing how to keep and exploit an advantage, but then defensively, it's great too. The second thing is for Moncho Fernandez in Obradoiro in the ACB, and it's called 5-on-5v5 on the table. So for every basket missed, whether it's a 1, 2, or 3-pointer, those points get added to the table. So the next team that scores, if they score like a 2 or 3, they would get the 3 points if it's a 3, plus all the points which are available to offer on the table.
Wow.
So it could be, you know, a team could go from 0-0 to suddenly being 10-0 up, 10-0 up. And it's amazing just for intensity, competitiveness, and taking high value open shots.
That's awesome. We're gonna ask Dan Betts about that when we speak to him.
Yeah,
so that's a great drill. I used to run something slightly differently. I used to run a game called 50 points, which was actually based on defense. You know, you had to make the stop and a rebound to actually get the points, and it was the first team to 50. So really, it's a slightly different take on that, but that's great stuff. Favorite all-time basketball coach?
This is a really tough one, Tony, because I've obviously, as we spoke about, I've drawn influence from so many people. If I was forced to say one, I think it would be someone like Popovich, because the culture is incredible, and just being around him, I really got a sense for that. And maybe Stevens for like X's and O's. But hopefully, in 10, 20 years, that to me would be like a young coach who has kind of got to a position of prominence just by working hard and doing things differently. And so I really look up to 2 New Zealand coaches, Ross McMains and Zico Coronel, for those reasons. And I would say last thing would be Ryan Panong, because he's really, we both obviously spoken about Ryan, but he is pushing the boat, and that's all just down to work ethic and intellectual curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, favorite saying or statement that you say almost on a daily or weekly basis?
So I'm not a big quotes guy, but my clinic, but the Einstein one, which is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Because I think there are a lot of parallels we can draw to that with traditional approaches to coaching.
Okay, good stuff. Really great stuff. Listen, Coach, thank you again for your time. It's been really, an incredible, hour plus of listening to, like I said, someone that's, extremely, pushing the boundaries of innovation in our game. And I know that, this is only just the start. I think that, there's going to be a big career for you. So I thank you very much indeed for being on Time Out Coaching, and good luck for the rest of the season. And I hope that at some stage we can see each other in face to face, not just over Zoom.
Yeah, thank you so much, Coach. And I think this means a lot to do this, because this is the first thing I think I've done with Basketball England probably ever, just independently, so hopefully it's the start of more things to come, and I'm definitely really looking forward to doing more with you and getting to know each other better over the next 2 years. So thanks for everything you do, for the English basketball community.
Thank you, Coach.